Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks once again for being here for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. Up on the satellite imagery, we've got definitely a lot drier with less wind here up through the interior to the northwest coast. We saw the last couple of days with strong high pressure aloft out over the Bering Sea, even though there's a huge mass of moisture that's come in over the ridge, but most of the flow here from south to north, and it looks like southern edge there right along the Aleutians here at 2 p.m. Monday afternoon, and some breaks, and the rain ends down to the south, so you could see some clearing here, especially during the evening Monday. Nice conditions there over Bristol Bay, south central Alaska, into the Panhandle, some clearing. Got the low pressure area off the coast there, and actually you can see the band rotating away from the coastline in the afternoon while some of this stuff slides northwestward, mostly along and east of the border, and that'll stay in Canada for the most part over the next couple of days. Up to the north, a lot of cloudiness right through here that's sort of sinking southward. The higher level clouds are coming southward while the lower level clouds are kind of hung up along the Alaska Range and the mountainous terrain up there, but that extends all the way out to the Arctic coast. Clear skies there, Kodiak Island, and pretty gusty winds along the North Gulf Coast here with the lower pressure off the southeast coast and somewhat higher pressure in over the Yukon. On the chart today, you can see the gradient I just spoke of here right along the North Gulf Coast there into Prince William Sound, but pretty tight from Cordova or the Copper River Delta eastward there, so keeping gales out. Northern Link Canal, definitely gale force gusts in that area, as well as the north coast of the Panhandle, and lighter winds down to the south with less gradient, but saw some sunshine today and not much of anything in the way of precipitation. Up to the northwest here, 1,035 millibar high right over the Chukchi Sea, and we've got just some flurries scattered around in the clouds there. Most of the moisture over here to the north, all in a kind of a decreasing mode. Again, dry for Bristol Bay. Out to the west, massive area of moisture. The front right through here, and the southerly winds in advance of that. But you can see the back edge of the rain in this, this push of moisture right along the Aleutians now with rain and fog up to the Pribilofs and the warm front. And most of that action sliding northward, but the entire pattern gradually shifting eastward. So tonight, you'll see the front just move eastward a short distance there. So that'll bring the rain in toward the Pribilof Islands, back down toward the eastern Aleutian areas, and then on over to Adak and Atka. Pretty steady rain throughout most of the night tonight, and then the winds dying off, becoming more westerly, be going into showers for tomorrow morning. Otherwise, mostly clear skies here over the western interior with fairly light winds under basically a ridge axis through this area here. But you head east, you pick up more clouds, and then a persistent area of light snow scattered around the White Mountains, back down along the Alaska Range. Amounts really not that significant at all in that pattern, actually extending all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. Maybe a few flurries there back toward Barrow to Wainwright, and possibly clearing out Cape Lisburne to Point Hope, with the moisture now across St. Lawrence Island, maybe the Bering Strait with the gusty south winds in that area, but really mild temperatures coming in, pushing a fair distance to the north. You can see the rain snow line all the way up just about off the chart there, near and maybe even off the Russian coast with that warm air, but cold air down in the interior and in northwest Canada. Got the next system here southwest of the Queen Charlotte Islands, and that's nudging some rain into the southern southeast coast. We're actually no farther than about Dixon Entrance here through tonight, and then Tomorrow really doesn't make much of advance northward, just a chance of rain here along the southern coast. Not much change in the north, still the gusty winds with the tide gradient there over the northern panhandle, in across the North Gulf Coast, slackening off Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet. Clear and chilly weather here over the interior tomorrow with, should be mostly sunny, definitely probably all sunshine there for Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, northward to the eastern Arctic coast. Picking up some clouds there, central coast, and now the rain advancing eastward to just right along the coast here. Better chance of the Seward Peninsula along with those increasing southerly winds across the Chukchi Sea. Rain southward there to the eastern Aleutians, and then cutting off. In fact, not even much in the way of even any shower activity behind the front with much lighter winds. Picking up a little bit there with this trough swinging down, but nothing too serious. And then for Wednesday, that front weakens but pushes inland here with a westerly flow around 1,040 millibar high just south of the west central Aleutians. So that'll just drive that thing inland. So it looks like rain will possibly spill into the Kuskokwim Valley and likely reach the Alaska Range late in the day, definitely into the Bristol Bay area northward. Snow possibly here for the western Arctic coast, mixed in between, and increasing clouds over the eastern interior, but that's about it as far as any changes go. No change for the panhandle. This moisture now scooting into the south. This stuff staying off to the east, so you'll be dry and clear, as well as on the chilly side there with the windy conditions continuing in the north. And for the low temperatures tonight, we've got 0 to 5 below, 6, 7, maybe even 10 below in some areas like Chukchi here over the northeast interior. Otherwise, single numbers, eastern Arctic coast to mid-20s there for the northwest coast and the Seward Peninsula, near 30, Nunivak Island, to the frost point there at St. Lawrence Island. Single numbers in teens here, south central Alaska, milder along the coast, and quite a range over the panhandle, depending on the wind and cloud cover, anywhere from, say, 15 to 35 with the above freezing temperatures down along the south. And for the highs tomorrow afternoon, single numbers, upper Yukon Valley, Brooks Range, all the way down to Tok, and maybe the Copper River Basin, otherwise should be mostly in the teens there. Same thing for south central Alaska, 20s, and then teens in the west with near 40 actually along the southwest coast of Nunivak Island, into the 40s for the Pribilofs, mid-40s central Aleutians, call it upper 30s, lower 40s, Kodiak Island on up to Seldovia and Homer. And then near 40 over the southern panel, staying in the mid-20s up to the north. For the low temperatures forecast from Wednesday morning, it looks a little colder now, anywhere from 10 to 20 below zero over the northeast interior, and then 10 to 15 below, all the way down to the Alaska Range. South of there, call it 5 to 10 below for the Copper River Basin. Single numbers to lower teens, south central Alaska, and dramatically milder here over the delta with 20s in that area, and upper teens here in the northern panel, sliding into about 30 there for the southern areas. And then the highs staying below zero over the eastern interior and warmer out to the west.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into the aviation section of the show, flying weather, a lot of IFR, widespread area here over the central eastern Bering Sea, just cutting off there at Nunivak Island, marginal VFR hugging the Yukon Delta coast down into the Alaska Peninsula, improving back to the west there. Good VFR over much of the interior and some marginal VFR up there along the Arctic coast. Otherwise, southeast coast, VFR all the way to Dixon Entrance. And then for Tuesday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, we've got IFR now nudging its way into the coastline, but not all that far. And the marginal stuff isn't making it too far inland either. A little bit more extensive up there across Norton Sound. And some IFR on the southern area there of the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise pretty good here over the interior. Again, on down the southeast coast, a little bit of marginal VFR there just near and west of Prince of Wales Island. And also over here, eastern Copper River Basin up to about where Northway Tok would be, and the eastern Arctic coast. And then for Wednesday morning, that front and the moisture and the IFR with it, right up to the coastline, now coming inland a ways northward there, all the way up to Cape Lisburne. Marginal VFR, western Arctic coast, a little bit on the east side. VFR holds another day here for the central and eastern interior. on down across the southeast coast. Marginal VFR covering much of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, in fact, just about all of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And then for passes, Anaktuvik could be possibly marginal to start the day with and then becoming VFR, and Adigan VFR the entire day. For Lake Clark and Merrill, looks pretty good. VFR either approach, ceilings visibility is unlimited, also for rainy and for windy VFR conditions. Looking good for Isabel, no change, VFR, same thing for Montesta, VFR. Tanita, same forecast, Portage, wide open. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR, a little bit turbulent. And with the freezing levels here, again, the cold air over the interior, Western Canada, 2,000 feet here, right across Dixon Entrance. The surface air cutting across the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast. And following the coastline here, north now, almost up to the Bering Strait, 8,000 feet up to the Pribilofs there. Again, this signifying the area of upper high pressure. Icing-wise, moisture coming through with the front, so areas of light to isolated moderate rime from the eastern Aleutians, diminishing back toward Adak, and then northward to St. Lawrence Island, some of that spilling in across the Seward Peninsula and along the northwest coast. None expected over the interior here, and maybe some areas of down over the southern southeast coast above about 3,000 feet. Otherwise, with the warm air aloft, you got to get up to about 9,000 to 10,000 feet here over the southern Bering and the Aleutians, and then back down to about 3,000 feet up there to the north. Jet stream, there's that strong narrow ridge of high pressure here right across the eastern Bering, western interior. Got a 100-knot jet now sailing southward right across south central Alaska, across the Alaska Range. Kenai Peninsula areas diving well to the south and then cutting inland well away from the southeast coast. And the pattern at 9,000 feet showing northerly flow basically, not too strong up here to the north, about 10 to 20 knots, but really picking up here from the central interior and along the Alaska Range up to about 40 knots here, sweeping down across southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, the Barrens, and then much lighter there for the Alaska Peninsula. Pretty breezy on the westerlies there along the Aleutians, and up to 35 knots there over the central Bering Sea, and then it takes a turn to the north there at about 20 to 25 through the Bering Strait. Panhandle, 40 knots out of the northeast here over the northern Panhandle, and about 25 down to the south. And for the 3,000 feet here, same pattern, a little lighter on the winds, 15 to 30 there for the southeast coast, north to northeast, 35 knots. Kenai Peninsula down across Kodiak Island, falling back to about 25 there. 20-knot winds coming across the Alaska Peninsula, pretty light on up to the north. And then the westerlies, 20 to 25 on out to the west there. And then those turn southerly at 25 to 30 up across St. Lawrence Island to about 20 knots there around Cape Lisburne. And for turbulence, with those strong winds, we've got moderate chop, pretty likely there below 4,000 feet, especially for small aircraft, St. Lawrence Island on up to the northwest coast. And then the more widespread area here, channeled winds from Prince William Sound in the northern Panhandle.
One of them beautiful days.
More time you hear these seagulls all the time, you know. But there was none that day.
It was spooky quiet.
I looked down and there was a box of 22 shells, and I said, wow. I reached down and picked those up, and I said, man, this is going to be my lucky day.
We were just about ready to make the set when we felt this tapping vibration in the bottom of the skiff.
You know, we heard this rolling rumble.
We didn't know what it was, because it was severe.
And it started rolling. And it was just like that first.
You got to remember, this was during the Cold War. My immediate thoughts were they nuked Anchorage.
It was just awesome.
All hell broke loose, and the ground started rocking and rolling. And my little buddy told me, "Earthquake, run."
So we started running.
The earth was opening up right across the street, right in front of me, and black water was shooting up in the air about, I would say, 15 to 30 feet
the tops of the foam poles snapping off.
The trees were whipping back and forth.
And it just kept right on a shaking. And as it got further along, it was worse.
As we stood there on the corner, the first of the Standard oil tanks began to explode.
Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of gallons of fuel that were burning.
And it burned and burned and burned. It was light as day that night, except for the black soot that was falling.
March 27th, 1964. Alaska had experienced the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in North America. The magnitude 9.2 quake left Anchorage and other communities devastated. And although there would be aftershocks for weeks, for most of Alaska, the worst was over. But for many coastal communities, the horror was only beginning. The mega-scale earthquake sent multiple killer tsunamis onto Alaska's shores. Most fatalities occurred in Seward, Valdez, and Kodiak.
The channel completely emptied out. You could actually see the bottom of the channel.
And we should have realized, I guess, that the water was going to come in rapidly, but we were fairly ignorant of tsunamis.
No cresting wave. It was just this huge surge that came up and took what boats were left in the harbor and basically rolled them around town.
So it come way up in and washed all of the town out down below, just everything.
Turned and started running, and it happened about as fast as I just told you.
When the water went back out, it went down through the channel, just whoosh.
It may have been like 20 or 30 knots of current going through that channel. It's incredible.
Of man in a boat with no oars or nothing. He was just sitting there, probably just paralyzed, you know. And he was going round and round.
Over 30 people died on Kodiak Island. It's relatively sparsely populated. It happened at a time of day when most people were away from the harbor and the businesses downtown. They were at home already. And if it had happened earlier, the loss of life would have been a lot higher.
Kodiak's devastation was caused by the main tsunami wave that was triggered out in the Gulf of Alaska. But Seward experienced a phenomenon called local tsunamis, which were generated by landslides in nearby Resurrection Bay. These waves were far more dangerous than the main tsunami, which struck later. Bob Eads and his brother were south of town on Lowell Point when the first locally generated wave hit.
The first wave came in way over in that direction. That's when the ocean was boiling with them big boils there, and it went clear over 4th of July at treetop level over there and clear around to the head of the bay, clear out to the airport, and clear into the small boat harbor, and then headed toward Mount Marathon and took the small boat harbor out.
Bob and his brother jumped into their pickup truck and tried to escape.
I couldn't outrun it. That overtook us, and we was under about 15 feet of water. That covers up, and it got awful dark, blacker than the inside of a goat, you know. We thought, well, it's just about the end. And then we seen the daylight come. The water went down and back out.
The brothers miraculously survived, but what no one knew was that the main tsunami from the Gulf was bearing down on Seward.
The water just completely emptied right out of the bay. You couldn't see anything.
Resurrection Bay is approximately 900 feet deep, and what just startled me looking out there was no water, absolutely no water as far as you can see. The bay's 18 miles deep and 2 to 3 miles wide, and I could see no water at all. And I commented to my dad about it, and that should have been our warning sign to turn around and get out of there, but we didn't.
Coming back into the bay was this big swell. I mean, great big swell, and it wasn't a round one like it went out. It was combing at the top.
And somebody screaming, "Get out, get out. Tsunami coming, tidal wave coming. Get out, go to high ground."
There was this barge, and it had a big crane right at the back of it. It was just like a skier, and he was just skiing right going out of town with this big swell. And as I went around the corner and started up the hill, well, the box cars and the railroad tracks or railroad cars hit me right in the back of the wrecker, and I would say probably pushed me up the hill about 20 or 30 feet.
By then, Doug McRae and his family had scrambled onto the roof of their house.
We took a wild ride. It was like a surf ride. There was power lines that we were worried about getting scraped off the roof. Those tree limbs, and we were spinning and bouncing off trees. And this one, I'm just guessing maybe 10 minutes. And we got wedged in amongst some big trees, big cottonwood trees.
Power had gone off, the sewers were gone, the water was gone. There was absolutely nothing left in the way of utilities.
All the docks had completely disappeared. There's just a few stumps sticking up there. Yeah, it's really a mess. And basically for us, Seward was gone because our livelihood was gone, our employment was gone, the canneries were gone.
And finally I turned to my mother and said to her, "Well, Mom, there goes your All-America City." And we laughed.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Gales, almost storm force winds in the forecast for Northern Link Canal. Gusts of 60 knots, sustained 45, 40-knot winds for Stevens Passage, and then much lighter, more easterly at 20 for Clarence Strait. Small craft advisories east-northeast on the south coast. We've got gales on the north coast, 35 knots with gusts of 50. And then for Wednesday, those come down 30 to 35 knots here, so we still got some gales in that portion of the coast, diminishing to 20 knots on the south coast, northeast 20 for Clarence Strait, but throw some 35-knot wind gusts in with that. A shade lighter there for Stevens Passage at 35 knots from the north, and 40 knots, gust 55 for Link Canal. Moving on to Prince William Sound, north 25 knots with gusts of 40, but seas only 4 feet. And then 50-knot gusts here for the North Gulf Coast was sustained at 35. Small craft advisories, Barren Islands into Kachemak Bay from the northwest, and 20-knot winds in store for Cook Inlet. And for the Wednesday outlook, Cook Inlet, lighter winds. We've got northeast 10 to 15, northwest 15 to 20. There across the Barren Islands, westerlies at 10. So much lighter winds here for the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, light, but predominantly northeast at 10, 2-foot seas. Kodiak Island there on the east side, north 30 knots, seas 9 feet, lighter there for Shelikof Strait out of the northwest, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, north at 20 knots, and then 10 knots here on the south side, east 15 on the Bering Sea side, northeast 15 for Bristol Bay, and then those will pick up here for Wednesday, east 25, small craft advisories, and then swinging around to the northwest across the peninsula, 25 to 30 knots. Westerlies at 20 southwest of Sitkinak, and northwest 15 for the east side of Kodiak Island, and east at 10 for Shelikof Strait. Out in the Aleutians, 20 to 30 knot winds for the western zones. Adak and Atka much lighter, just west at 15, and really not much difference here except for the direction, south to southwest for the Fox Islands, with seas running as high as 10 to 11 feet. And then for the next day, Wednesday, small craft advisories, northwest 25 to 30 knots, so pretty good breeze picking back up there for that zone. And Adak and Atka, 20 to 25 knot winds, not too bad. And then gales reappear out over the far western Aleutians with that next system. Along the southwest coast, 20 to 30 knot winds out of the southeast there, strongest Nunivak Island up to St. Lawrence Island, south 30 for St. Matthew Island, and small craft advisories also for the Pribilofs. And then for Wednesday, west 30 knots, pretty good flow here out of the west up to gale force there for St. Matthew Island. That'll be pushing that front eastward. on those winds with the rain reaching the Alaska Peninsula late in the day, otherwise southwest or St. Lawrence Island. And then for the Arctic coast here, pretty light on the east side, 5 to 10 knots out of the east, pick it up to 15 for the central coast, 20 on the west side, Cape Beaufort down to Wales, southeast at 30 with 7 to 8 foot seas. And the outlook for Wednesday, not much change here. Small craft advisories, 30 knot winds, same direction, east 20 on the west coast. Small craft advisories there for the central coast with 5 foot seas, and then even an increase in the winds here on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, 15 to 20 knots, but that's ice covered. And then for tonight, light winds up that way with high pressure over the area, variable clouds, areas of Florida's eastern interior, mostly clear, light winds in the west, and some of these temperatures will be on the chilly side. Stays windy, North Gulf Coast, northern panhandle, and just a risk of a chance of rain appearing there from Dixon entrance into the southern southeast coast that will continue to kind of skiff the area there tomorrow. No change to the north, still breezy and windy in areas. No change over the interior. Look for an increase in the clouds out along the coast as this front pushes inland here, or pushes eastward. Main push though still south to north, but again the entire pattern is shifting eastward. So it looks pretty good for some rain here from the eastern Aleutians, spreading well in across the Alaska Peninsula. And then we'll see for Wednesday, once this pattern develops here, that'll drive that front eastward. We'll have rain right up to the Alaska Range across Bristol Bay, back to the north and then northwest out to the Arctic coast. Big breakout here. Next system bringing those gales into the far western Aleutians in the afternoon. And pretty nice here across the southeast coast. Still windy though, but dry with sunshine, less wind, and pretty clear here for the Prince William Sound area. Eastern interior, look for an increase in the clouds. And again, there's probably a mixed precipitation pattern occurring over the central interior. Let's look at the weather. Thanks so much for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.